Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Perception is sharper than eyesight, and timing is louder than words. Every glance, every pause, every step you take leaves an invisible trail, and most people walk blindly into it. By the time they realize you've already seen through their plans, it's too late. They're left wondering, how did they know? It's not intuition, and it's not luck. It's the quiet accumulation of observation, patience, and ruthless honesty about human behavior. Studies show that humans subconsciously leak over 200 micro-expressions every hour, tiny signals that betray what they're thinking before a single word escapes their lips. That's 200 tiny windows into the truth, windows most people walk past, blindfolded, while you are already reading the story inside them. You've trained yourself to notice the things others dismiss, the subtle twitch of a finger, the hesitation before a sentence, the rhythm of someone's breath when they're trying to hide their real intentions. You move like a shadow in a room full of noise, a silent observer who turns their chaos into a predictable pattern. Humor isn't just a break, it's a weapon, a way to make the moment disarm them while you catalog every detail they think is invisible. By the end of this, you'll understand why every move you make sparks that burning question in others' minds. How did they know? It's not magic, it's mastery. And it's the kind of awareness that shifts the balance of every room you enter. Number one, you don't guess their next move. You read the patterns they try to hide. Most people think predicting behavior is about intuition or luck. They wait for signs that are loud and obvious, expecting the world to hand them answers. You don't play that game. You notice what others overlook, the little repetitions, the quiet choices, the subtle rhythms of someone's day. People think their habits are invisible, but nothing is truly hidden if you pay attention. Their morning routine, the way they respond when frustrated, the tiny gestures they repeat when they feel threatened, all of it forms a map. You don't guess. You follow the lines that are already drawn. When someone walks into a room, you see more than just their entrance. You see their patterns, the way they glance at certain people, the timing of their words, the pauses that try to disguise hesitation. These aren't random, they're signals. You start connecting them, linking moments together until what seemed unpredictable becomes clear. Others react on impulse, driven by emotion or habit, while you are quietly charting the underlying script. That's what makes your awareness feel uncanny to them. They think you predicted their move, but you didn't. You simply read what they were already revealing. The power comes from patience and observation. You don't rush to conclusions. You let actions repeat themselves, let choices reveal priorities, and let patterns emerge naturally. The more you watch, the more predictable behavior becomes. People leave traces everywhere, micro-decisions, body language, the way they phrase things under stress. You catch these and store them like pieces of a puzzle. Over time, you see the picture before anyone else even notices it exists. By reading patterns instead of guessing, you stop being surprised. You operate ahead of the moment, almost like you've stepped outside the flow of events. That's why every move you make seems calculated and inevitable. People wonder how you always seem one step ahead, but the truth is simple. You're just paying attention when everyone else is blind. You're reading what they think they've hidden, and in that knowledge lies your quiet power. Number two, you mastered the art of listening to what people avoid saying. Most people listen to words, but words are just the surface. The real truth lives in the gaps, in what's left unsaid. People lie, bend the truth, or hide their intentions behind carefully chosen phrases, but their avoidance is louder than their sentences. You've learned to hear that silence, to track the subtle ways someone sidesteps a topic, changes the subject, or hurries over details. Every pause, every hesitation, every slight shift in tone is a breadcrumb they leave behind, and you're trained to follow it. When someone talks around an answer, you notice. When they laugh too hard, when their eyes flicker to the side, when their voice softens or stiffens. You catch it. That's where the story is. Most people ignore it because it's inconvenient, because it doesn't fit the narrative they want to see. You don't ignore it, you study it. You let the silence speak its truth while others chase the noise. That's why your insight feels almost supernatural to them. They think you know things before they've said them, but you're just listening to what they refuse to say. It's not about confrontation or forcing someone to speak. It's about patience, observation, and understanding that the real signals are often invisible to the careless. People carry their secrets in their rhythm, in what they avoid mentioning, in the micro moments where they almost slip. You've learned to notice those moments and connect them with the bigger picture. Over time, it becomes a language you can read instinctively. Mastering this skill doesn't just give you information, it gives you control. You know the unspoken, the hidden, the tension before it manifests. People think they're private, clever, or untouchable, but their avoidance betrays them. You've trained yourself to hear what most people can't even sense. And that's what makes every move you make seem precognitive. You don't just know people's words, you know their truths, and that knowledge is invisible, quiet, and devastatingly accurate. Number 3, you don't react emotionally. You analyze motives like a surgeon cutting through noise. Most people respond to life with instinct, letting anger, excitement, or frustration dictate their next move. That's what makes them predictable and easy to read. You operate differently. You've trained yourself to pause, to step outside the immediate surge of emotion, and examine the situation with precision. Every word, every action, every gesture carries intent. You strip away the noise, separating the surface drama from the underlying motive, and that's what gives you the edge that feels impossible to others. When someone tries to manipulate, intimidate, or surprise you, they expect a reaction, because that's what everyone gives. You don't give them that satisfaction. You don't flare, you don't argue, you don't panic. You study. You dissect the reason behind their behavior. What are they trying to gain? What fear are they hiding? What need are they feeding? Once you identify the driving force, you no longer need to guess or react blindly. You act strategically, and your moves feel almost prophetic because they are built on understanding, not impulse. This ability doesn't make you cold, it makes you unstoppable. People misinterpret your calm for weakness, your silence for ignorance. But while they're reacting, you're analyzing patterns, connecting dots they didn't even realize existed. You see the layers, the context, the subtle pushes and pulls that guide behavior. You don't just respond, you respond with intent, targeting the core of the situation rather than the distractions that everyone else fights over. The truth is, emotional reactions are loud, messy, and easy to manipulate. By removing emotion from the equation, you remove predictability. You move ahead while others stumble, confused by the chaos they create themselves. That's why your timing feels uncanny, your insight feels precise, and your actions feel inevitable. You don't just see what's happening, you see why it's happening. You operate above the noise, slicing through confusion to reach the truth of motive. And in that space, you are always 3 steps ahead of anyone trying to play the same game. Number 4, you learn that everyone repeats themselves, not in words, but in behavior. People like to think they're unpredictable, that they're spontaneous and clever. The truth is far simpler. Everyone follows invisible loops, habits they don't notice, and patterns they can't escape. These loops reveal more than any confession ever could. You've learned to see these repetitions, to notice the small actions that keep surfacing, the choices they make again and again, the ways they react under pressure. While most people chase dramatic gestures and flashy displays, you track the quiet consistencies, and that's where the real story lies. Every person has habits, some obvious, some hidden, that shape their decisions. It could be how they shift their weight when uncomfortable, how they phrase an excuse, or even how they respond to a compliment. These behaviors are fingerprints of the mind. The more you watch, the more patterns emerge. What seems random at first glance is actually a predictable rhythm, a set of signals that repeat across different situations. You don't have to guess what someone will do next. You observe what they always do. That repetition is a roadmap. The key is noticing without judgment. People slip into the same behaviors because of fears, desires, or conditioned reactions. They may think no one is paying attention, but you are. You don't need words to confirm what you already know. The way someone moves, the little tells they ignore, the choices they make unconsciously, all of it builds a profile that feels almost prophetic when interpreted correctly. Mastering this skill gives you clarity and foresight. You stop being surprised by betrayal, manipulation, or hidden agendas. You see the loops before they fully manifest and act accordingly. Others are blindsided because they live in the moment. You live in the pattern. Every repeated gesture, every predictable reaction becomes evidence in your hands. By the time people realize they've exposed themselves, you're already several steps ahead, navigating the room with precision while they wonder, baffled, how did they know? Number 5, you watch their contradictions, not their confidence. Confidence is loud. It draws attention, demands respect, and often misleads those who judge solely by appearances. Most people fall for it, assuming that whoever projects certainty knows the truth or has control. You don't. You look past the show and focus on the cracks, the contradictions, the tiny inconsistencies that reveal reality. Confidence is a mask, but contradictions are the truth leaking through. That's where the real story lives, and that's what makes your insight feel uncanny to everyone else. People contradict themselves all the time, often without realizing it. They say one thing and do another, express enthusiasm for an idea but hesitate when the moment arrives, promise loyalty but act selfishly when no one is watching. These contradictions are more valuable than any statement of intent because they are involuntary. They expose priorities, fears, and hidden motives. You've trained yourself to notice the gap between what is said and what is done. While others are dazzled by the polished presentation, you're cataloging the evidence. The power in watching contradictions lies in timing and attention. You don't confront, you don't accuse, you simply observe. Every mismatch between word and action, every hesitation or slip in logic is a piece of the puzzle. Over time, patterns emerge, showing not just what someone will do, but why. That's how you anticipate moves before they happen, how your decisions feel inevitable, and how people are left baffled, asking how you always seem to be one step ahead. Most people are blind to the dissonance between appearance and reality because it's uncomfortable to acknowledge. You've learned to embrace it. The contradictions reveal character, predict behavior, and expose intent. By focusing on what is inconsistent rather than what is performed with confidence, you cut through the illusion and operate in the truth. That is what sets you apart, the ability to see what others are too dazzled or distracted to notice, and to move with precision where everyone else is misled by appearances. Number 6, you understand that the first answer they give is rarely the real one. Most people take words at face value, accepting the first response as truth. They nod, believe, and move on, blind to the subtle signals that betray what's really happening beneath the surface. You don't operate that way. You know that the first answer is often a shield, a rehearsed reaction, or a reflex designed to protect, impress, or manipulate. The truth rarely arrives in the opening statement. It comes in what follows, in the hesitation, the shift in tone, the second sentence that doesn't quite align with the first. That's where the real story hides, and that's where you thrive. When someone responds, They're managing impressions, filtering information, and controlling the narrative. Most people are too eager to believe or too polite to probe further. You, however, notice the cracks, the subtle changes that indicate uncertainty or concealment. A slight pause before a word, a shift in body language, a small overcorrection in phrasing. All of these point to the deeper truth that first words try to hide. You don't take the surface at face value. You read between the lines, letting the initial statement guide you toward the real message, not define it. The power of recognizing this lies in patience and observation. You learn to wait, to watch, to let the story unfold naturally. The truth often comes wrapped in hesitation, repetition, or contradiction, and you catch it because you're looking for what's hidden, not what's offered. This allows you to anticipate intentions, predict moves, and respond in a way that feels almost prophetic to others. People who rely on first impressions act reactively. You act strategically. While they assume they've revealed everything important with their opening words, you've already mapped the terrain. You know the patterns, the motives, and the underlying truths that guide their actions. That awareness gives you an edge, a clarity that makes your insight seem uncanny and your decisions inevitable. By the time anyone realizes the first answer was incomplete, you're already 3 steps ahead, operating in the reality they thought they were hiding. Number 7, you recognize emotional footprints. The residue left after someone tries to appear unaffected. People like to think they can control how they appear, that they can mask fear, anger, or desire behind a composed exterior. They try to present themselves as calm, confident, untouchable, but emotion leaves traces, tiny footprints that linger even after a smile returns or a voice steadies. You've learned to read those footprints. You notice the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in posture, the tension that doesn't fully release. These remnants of emotion are involuntary, impossible to fake completely, and they reveal truths that words often try to hide. When someone experiences strong emotion, it imprints on their body and behavior. Their eyes may flicker, their fingers may tremble, their tone may tighten, even if only for a fraction of a second. Most people overlook these details because they're subtle and easily dismissed. You don't. You see the residue of what they felt, not just what they claim to feel. That's why your understanding seems almost preternatural. You're not reading their words. You're reading the emotional echoes that linger long after the performance ends. The power of noticing emotional footprints is precision. You can anticipate reactions, understand motives, and gauge intentions without confrontation. You see the impact of unspoken stress, unacknowledged desire, or hidden resentment before it manifests fully. People think they've recovered, that the moment is over, but you know the truth is still in motion beneath the surface. You act with awareness, guided by evidence they leave unconsciously. Most people respond to the obvious: loud anger, visible excitement, clear distress. You respond to what lingers, the subtle hints that reveal the inner reality. Emotional footprints don't lie, and by tracking them, you move with clarity and foresight. You understand what drives someone at their core, what they fear, and what they hope to hide. That awareness makes your perception feel uncanny, your timing flawless, and your moves inevitable. You're not reacting to the show they put on. You're navigating the reality they can't hide. Number 8, you stopped believing in random behavior. Most people think actions happen by chance, that some things are unpredictable, and that life is just a series of random events. You don't. You understand that every action, every choice, every reaction has a cause, even if it's hidden beneath layers of habit, fear, or desire. People think they're spontaneous, clever, or unpredictable, but nothing exists in isolation. Every movement, every word, every decision is connected to something deeper. You see those connections, and that's what makes your perception feel uncanny. When someone acts out, overreacts, or makes an unusual choice, most people shrug and call it randomness. You look closer. You notice the triggers that set them off, the patterns that led to the moment, the small decisions that stacked up like dominoes. What seems like chaos is actually a chain reaction, and you've trained yourself to read it from start to finish. You understand motivations, histories, and pressures, and you connect the dots they never realize are there. By the time others react, you've already anticipated what will happen next, because you see the invisible lines that guide behavior. This perspective gives you clarity and control. You don't waste energy reacting to what seems unpredictable, because you know there's always a reason behind the motion. Even the people who think they're acting freely are moving within frameworks shaped by fear, desire, pride, or habit. You notice the subtle signs, the tiny shifts, the moments they try to hide, and you use that to read what's coming before it arrives. People call it intuition, luck, or even psychic ability, but it's simply understanding cause and effect on a human level. Nothing is random if you know where to look. That's why your timing feels flawless, your awareness feels impossible, and your decisions land like they were inevitable. While everyone else is guessing, you're navigating a map built from patterns, motives, and behaviors. You operate in reality where others see only chaos, and that knowledge makes every move you make feel preordained, leaving people stunned and asking, how did they know? Number 9. You treat their behavior like a map, not a mystery. Most people approach human behavior like it's unpredictable, as if every action is a puzzle with no solution. You don't. You understand that behavior isn't random, it's a landscape, a map with hidden routes, patterns, and markers that reveal exactly where someone is heading. Every decision, every subtle gesture, every hesitation or overreaction is a landmark on that map. You don't try to guess. You read the terrain, and that's why your insight feels almost supernatural to others. When people act, they leave traces of intention. The words they choose, the timing of their responses, the small movements they assume go unnoticed. All of it is a coordinate. While others see chaos, you see structure. Each behavior is connected to previous actions, revealing desires, fears, and likely next moves. You track these signals, mentally plotting a path that leads directly to their intentions. The more you observe, the more detailed the map becomes, and the easier it is to anticipate what comes next. The difference between guessing and mapping is precision. Guessing is chance. Mapping is evidence. Most people respond to appearances or gut feelings reacting to surface-level signals. You dig deeper. You study repetition, contradiction, avoidance, and emotional residue to chart a route through their behavior. That route shows you where they are, where they're heading, and what drives them, long before they even realize it themselves. Mastering this skill gives you control and foresight. You move through interactions as if reading directions on a GPS, confident in your steps because you understand the terrain. People appear unpredictable only because they don't know you're already ahead, following a route they unknowingly paved. By treating behavior like a map rather than a mystery, you operate in clarity where others stumble in confusion. That's why every move you make seems deliberate, every decision seems precognitive, and everyone else is left wondering, how did they know? You're not guessing their path, you're walking it before they even start. Number 10. You learn to detach enough to watch people clearly. Most people see the world through emotion, through personal bias, and through the lens of their own experiences. That makes them reactive, easily swayed, and painfully predictable. You don't. You've learned the power of detachment, not indifference, but the ability to observe without letting personal feelings cloud your vision. This detachment allows you to see people for what they truly are, not what they want you to believe or what you hope them to be. It's the secret that turns ordinary awareness into uncanny insight. When someone acts out, provokes, or deceives, most people respond immediately, letting frustration, excitement, or curiosity guide their reaction. You don't. You step back, quietly analyzing the layers behind the action. You watch patterns, notice inconsistencies, and track intentions without letting yourself get drawn into the performance. This distance gives you clarity. It allows you to see micro movements, subtle shifts in behavior, and emotional cues that others completely miss. While everyone else reacts, you understand. Detachment also sharpens timing. People assume that emotions drive decisions and that reactions are always spontaneous. By watching from a place of neutrality, you can predict responses, anticipate moves, and act with precision. You're not slowed down by impulse or distracted by noise. You operate in a space where every action can be read and every pattern interpreted. This perspective makes your insight feel almost preordained because you're acting on observation rather than speculation. Most people confuse detachment with coldness or lack of empathy, but it's the opposite. Detachment amplifies understanding. It strips away the layers of chaos and performance to reveal truth, motive, and direction. By learning to detach, you've gained a vantage point others cannot reach. You see what they try to hide, predict what they haven't even realized themselves, and act in ways that make it seem like you can read minds. You don't just move through life. You navigate it with awareness, clarity, and control, leaving everyone else wondering, how did they know? Number 11, you track what they repeat under pressure. That's their truth. Everyone has a mask they wear when things are easy. Confidence, politeness, charm. They display what they want the world to see. But when pressure hits, when stakes are high and stress is real, the mask slips. People revert to the behaviors that are ingrained, the reactions that are automatic, and the patterns they cannot control. Those repeated actions under pressure are their truth. You've learned to watch for these moments, to notice what emerges when they think no one is paying close enough attention. That's where the real insight lives, and that's why your understanding feels almost impossible to them. Under stress, words become unreliable, promises crumble, excuses appear, and carefully rehearsed confidence falters. But behavior is harder to fake. The small tics, the way someone shifts weight, the slight changes in tone or posture, all reveal what they actually feel and value. While everyone else reacts to what's being said or displayed on the surface, you focus on the underlying truth embedded in repetition. That's how you can anticipate moves before anyone else sees them, because you're reading what people can't hide even when they try. The beauty of this skill is its consistency. One-off actions can be misleading. Repeated behaviors under pressure are almost impossible to disguise. They show what someone will do when stakes matter most, not what they say they will do. By tracking these patterns, you gain a map of their motives, fears, and priorities. You learn to predict reactions, navigate complex interactions, and make decisions that feel preordained because you understand the forces driving them. Most people ignore pressure tests, thinking surface behavior tells the whole story. You don't. You watch the cracks form, the habits resurface, and the truth reveal itself quietly but unmistakably. By observing what repeats under stress, you operate with clarity and foresight. You know the unspoken rules guiding others' actions, giving you a power that seems almost supernatural. People are left baffled, wondering, how did they know? When in reality you were simply reading the signals they couldn't hide. Number 12, you never underestimate the weight of their past on their present. People like to act as if the present moment exists in isolation, that who they are now has nothing to do with where they've been. You know better. Every choice, every hesitation, every reaction is influenced by a history that most refuse to acknowledge. Their past shapes patterns, fears, and desires in ways they don't even consciously realize. By understanding this, you gain insight that feels almost impossible to them. You're reading layers of experience embedded in every action, long before they speak or explain. When someone reacts in a way that seems irrational or unexpected, most people judge the moment at face value. You don't. You look deeper, tracing back through the experiences, disappointments, betrayals, and victories that molded their responses. Childhood lessons, early failures, past heartbreaks, moments of triumph, all leave traces that subtly dictate behavior. These traces aren't obvious, but they're consistent. You notice patterns that others overlook, the tendencies that repeat across contexts, and the small decisions that echo their history. This awareness gives you foresight into their behavior that seems uncanny. The weight of the past also explains contradictions and inconsistencies. People can say one thing and do another, act confidently in one moment and hesitantly in the next, not because they are deceptive, but because history left a mark on their instincts. You read these marks, you interpret them, understand the root causes, and anticipate how they will influence choices today. That's why your awareness feels almost prophetic. You're not predicting. You're analyzing the natural consequences of experience. Most people ignore history, seeing only the surface of actions. You dig beneath the surface, connecting patterns across time and mapping behavior with depth and precision. By recognizing the weight of the past, you move through interactions with a clarity and understanding that leaves others stunned. You see the forces that drive them, the invisible chains that shape their present, and the hidden patterns that dictate their next move. That's why every action you take seems inevitable, and why people are left asking, how did they know? You're simply reading the echoes of what they cannot escape. Number 13, you see intentions before actions, because you've watched enough to know how humans escalate. Most people only notice behavior after it happens, reacting to consequences rather than anticipating them. You operate differently. You've spent enough time observing patterns, enough time decoding habits, fears, and desires, that you can recognize the build-up before it becomes an action. Every big move starts small, an almost imperceptible shift in tone, a flicker of hesitation, a subtle alignment of words and gestures. While others are caught off guard by the outcome, you've already traced the path, identified the motive, and predicted the next step with precision. Humans aren't spontaneous, they escalate in patterns. A small insecurity becomes defensiveness. Defensiveness turns into argument, and argument can lead to conflict. Desire grows quietly before it manifests. Fear accumulates before it triggers a reaction. You see these micro steps because you've trained yourself to notice what others ignore. Where someone else sees chaos or randomness, you see the progression, the trajectory, and the pressure points that inevitably guide behavior. That's why your insight seems impossible. People feel exposed because you've recognized their intentions before even they fully acknowledge them. The skill lies in patience and careful observation. You don't rush to conclusions, and you don't make assumptions based on a single moment. You watch, analyze, and track escalation over time, connecting the dots between small behaviors and larger actions. Every twitch, every pause, every micro-reaction becomes evidence of what is about to unfold. By understanding escalation, you turn unpredictability into predictability. Most people respond to what happens. You respond to what will happen. That foresight allows you to act decisively, to stay ahead, and to navigate situations with control that feels almost supernatural. You aren't guessing, They are revealing their intentions through the subtle cues they can't suppress. By seeing escalation before action, you operate in a space where everyone else is reactive, leaving them stunned, baffled, and asking, how did they know? You already knew, because you read the signals no one else saw. Number 14. You use your own scars as a database, not decoration. Most people wear their scars like badges of honor, reminders of what they survived or endured. You don't. You treat them as a living record, a source of insight and understanding that shapes how you read the world and the people in it. Every disappointment, betrayal, failure, and heartbreak has left a mark, not just on your emotions, but on your perception. You've learned to study those marks, extract patterns, and use them to recognize the same tendencies in others. Your scars become data points, evidence of behavior, and a framework for anticipating actions before they even happen. Pain teaches lessons most people ignore. It exposes motives, highlights weaknesses, and reveals the predictable ways humans respond under stress or temptation. Where others see suffering, you see information. Every experience you've endured adds depth to your understanding of human nature. You remember the people who lied, the ones who betrayed trust, the ones who acted out of fear or desire. You store that knowledge internally, connecting it to patterns, recognizing repetition, and learning the signals that indicate similar behavior in others. That's why your awareness feels uncanny. They can't see the database you've built through lived experience. Using scars as a database also makes you strategic. You don't react blindly, you respond with informed precision. Every interaction, every choice, every reading of someone's behavior is filtered through lessons learned the hard way. You anticipate moves, decode intentions, and act with clarity because you've internalized evidence that most people dismiss. The mistakes, the betrayals, the failures, they are not burdens. They are a map for navigating the world with foresight and authority. Most people let scars define them emotionally, keeping them trapped in cycles of regret or defensiveness. You do the opposite. You let them define your perception, your judgment, and your insight. By transforming pain into understanding, you operate with a level of awareness and anticipation that feels almost impossible to others. You don't just survive life. You learn from it, leverage it, and use it to see the truth behind every action, leaving everyone stunned and asking, how did they know? You already knew because your scars taught you everything they tried to hide. Every move you make leaves a ripple that others can't ignore, not because you guessed, not because you're lucky, but because you've mastered the art of seeing the unseen. You read patterns where others see randomness. You listen to the unspoken, analyze motives instead of reacting, and track behavior that reveals truth long before it's spoken. You notice contradictions, repeated habits, and emotional footprints that everyone else misses. You understand the weight of the past, the subtleties of escalation, and the lessons hidden in your own scars. This is not intuition. It's awareness forged through observation, experience, and ruthless honesty. Every interaction becomes a map, every signal a guide, and every silent clue a confirmation of what most people are blind to. You don't just move through life, you navigate it with precision, clarity, and control, making it feel inevitable, leaving others stunned and asking, how did they know? This is the power of true perception. When you operate with this level of awareness, nothing catches you off guard. You anticipate, you respond strategically, and you understand the invisible forces that guide behavior. People may think you're psychic, lucky, or extraordinary, but the truth is simpler. You're paying attention when everyone else is distracted. You've trained yourself to see reality, stripped of illusions, and that is what separates you from the rest. If this insight resonated with you, make sure you join the journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and be part of a community that values awareness, strategy, and understanding the hidden truths in every interaction. Like this video if it gave you that "how did they know" feeling. Comment your thoughts below and share it with someone who needs to see the world in a completely new way. Stay aware, stay ahead, and keep mastering the art of perception. Stay blessed always.